Greetings and welcome to another episode of Behind the Panels. So, today we're going to try something a little bit different, and instead of going through the latest episode of my webcomic Simon Sue's, what we're going to try to do is have each one of us present to you our creative process. So, just kind of a small window into how we go about creating content for the different media that we are involved in. Okay. And I'm going to kick it off with just showing you my process of how I go about starting or setting up my file for a brand new episode or a brand new chapter. And like with most stories, you usually start out with a script. So what I like to do is kind of have a skeleton outline of the the entire episode, and I'll usually have a bulleted list of all of the plot beats that I need to hit, all of the character arcs that or the parts of the character arc that need to happen from start to end, and then any reveals, or how this particular episode fits into the grander scheme of the entire series. And then, just so that I have something to work off of when I start drawing out my panels, what I'll do is just commit some like really crappy dialogue in the beginning, just so I can get a gauge of how long the episode is, the dialogue or the back and forth with some of the characters, and then thinking about some of the shots or the character direction that I want to have in each of the shots. And once I have that down, then I will be ready to start moving into Photoshop. What I'll normally do is I will open up this kind of templated Photoshop master file, and this one I keep at a resolution that is web kind of web formatted. So it's 800 pixels by however long the entire length of the episode is going to be. And because this is that Webtoons scrolling long format, it's pretty long. So you can see if I scroll down, this is the length of the entire episode. But for me, just the way that I work, I like to have everything flowing all together as I'm doing my thumbnails. But in the beginning, just so that I have stuff to work with, what I'll do is I'll take the script and I will start laying out dialogue bubbles. So I'll go through.
That actually answers my question. I was wondering at what point you start thinking about bubble placement, whether that's there from the start or something that comes later.
Well, for me, that is definitely, the whole process is very iterative. So I will do kind of everything at a sort of placeholder level at the beginning, but then I have to see it first on paper before I can make any changes to it.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe in the long run end up doing a lot of extra work because you're changing things or you're throwing out a lot of work. But for me, I haven't gotten to a place where I can see everything right away without committing it to paper or
I'm picturing you eventually evolving to the point where you're like that guy who's just looking at streams of zeros and ones.
I see the Matrix.
You see the
Matrix. So I am also waiting for that moment. It's not happened yet.
Okay.
So what I'll do is I will typically have my script next to me, and then I will, and this is super rough, but I'll go through each line and I'll be like, oh, I know that there's for the first 3 lines here. So if you take a look at the script, there'll be a couple of dialogue lines between this character named Fred, and it says flashback of the team entering the courthouse, and that's actually one shot or one sequence. So I'll kind of give myself a set of panels that I want to dedicate to this shot, and I'll just sort of kind of quickly lay out some of the actions or the tentpole scenes that I want to happen here. So I will, for instance, be like, oh, it starts on the train with both these characters named with Simon and Shannon, and so I know I want an establishing shot, and I at this point I kind of know how long I want people to scroll for, so
Mm-hmm.
I will block out a section here, and I'll I'll lay out sort of the train here, and in my head I know a little bit about the camera work or the kind of shot composition that I want. It's definitely not going to remain this way, so I will edit it later. But I sort of know whether I want it to be, you know, establishing shot or close up or medium shot, and I kind of have an idea of the character direction in the scene. So like I want it to feel very isolated and
This is so visually satisfying. I feel like I'm watching Bob Ross, like telling me to make happy mistakes right now.
so I'll maybe have one character on this side and then I'll have another character here, but I want them at the very bottom of this corner because I want the audience to scroll a bit before they hit the characters. So I know roughly that's kind of how much scrolling I want, and maybe a little bit more. So I'll give myself some buffer space and maybe just move the train scene out some more.
Is this something that you also feel like has evolved, you've evolved in your skill set over time, is being able to figure out this kind of pacing in terms of how much you want people to scroll or
Oh,
not scroll?
yeah, for sure. It was definitely a bunch of trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
And even to this day, I cannot actually, I can't gauge the pacing unless I deploy it to my phone and then just do a quick scroll first to get the feel. So
Mm.
what I'll do is I'll either break this out in the thumbnail version and then put it up on the website and then go through. So they have a way for you to, or Webtoons has a way for you to upload your panels before you actually launch your episode.
Okay.
And you can preview it on whatever device you can in a browser. So I'll go on my mobile browser and preview it that way. Or I actually have this software called TeamViewer, and you can use that to cast your desktop to your phone. And sometimes that's actually easier because I can cast my Photoshop to the phone and then make edits while I'm viewing it on the phone.
Hmm.
So I'll do that, and then I will just kind of block out the rest of the sequence. So I know that I definitely want a shot of Simon's head or Simon's face because I don't want to
Simon's ice cream swirl.
his ice cream squirrel hair
Yes.
has to be in the shot. So I at this point I kind of already know what beats to hit before you jump to another scene or you sort of change the mood and what is effective. So you want to make sure you see the characters' facial expressions, maybe have if there's another character in the scene, you want to see their facial expressions as well. So I know I need those beats. So I will lay out panels with that already kind of in mind. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes if I'm going really fast, I'll just say Simon face, or I'll say looking at window or out window.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's time and I really want to nail the particular shot framing in here, I'll actually go in and do a quick thumbnail pose.
More detailed dummy face, basically.
Yeah, and this is where construction comes in really handy because if you draw your character often enough, you'll know the distinct shapes that make up your character. So you can get them out really fast. And when you come back and look at this and you're like, who the hell am I looking at? You'll know it's it's your character, or you know which character it is. So you can go in and start cleaning this up.
Mm-hmm.
That's so cool.
And I always like to add a little bit of the background so I know where they are in space.
So they're not lost in space.
Yes.
Yeah. So I will keep doing this until I finish out the script, basically. And I know from experience that whatever I get from doing this really sort of rough layout of the script, and I'll close this for now, it's going to be almost twice what I commit to paper, or twice as many panels as I lay out first, because these
Wow.
are again just like the tentpole shots that I know I want to hit, but then that doesn't say anything about how I haven't really paced things finally yet. And I know I'm going to need in between panels to do that. And just from experience, it's almost worked out to be twice as long as this initial rough layout. But anyway, at this point, after I have all of the panels, because I want to have some bubble placement in there just to give me an idea of how, again, how I'm going to space out the dialogue as well as the art, and to have some of those bubbles already in the chunk. I'll just place them there to like get them ready. And that seems a little confusing, but I'll show you what I mean.
Mm.
So at this point, I have my 800 pixel resolution file, and that's kind of the low res web version. But I always like to res up my art so that if I need to use it for marketing purposes, or I want to reuse it and repurpose it in another scene, and it may be a blown up version of that panel, I just like to work bigger than the web version. But it's kind of an arbitrary number. So what I do is I will res up the entire file, and this can be a little painful if you don't have a good machine, but I'll res it up. I'll res up the width to about
Wow.
2,000 pixels.
Oh my god. And you had to upgrade your entire setup to be able to do these long form like format, right?
Yeah,
Or you had to change your whole process to accommodate this new
for sure,
structure.
for sure. This was, I used to do just regular print form comics, and I worked in a software called Manga Studio and Comic Works, and I had a whole other workflow for the page turner format. But this one, I'm doing it this way because for me, I need to see everything flow together in one large file. But two, I need to have the files broken up additionally into pieces so that I can work on aspects of the long format, but still have a master file that brings it all together. But anyway, after I add um, all of the chunked up files as linked smart objects, because now they're linked, if I double click on any of these guys, it will bring up that nested file as its own separate window. And you can see that all of the dialogue bubbles are in that text folder here, and all of the art is in its own separate folder. And then each one of these pieces of art, these panels, this might be overkill, but for me, because I repurpose some of the environment and some of the shots for flashback scenes, I really need to have these nested smart objects. So the difference between the linked smart objects and the nested ones is that the linked ones will link to a file that is external to that file, and it's somewhere else on your computer. Where
I mean,
the nest.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, what were you gonna say?
I thought you were finished. I'm sorry. I was just gonna say I don't think it's overkill because this is all putting down like the proper infrastructure so that you don't get backlogs in traffic.
I like the infrastructure term.
Mm-hmm.
It's very appropriate. If you click inside of the nested smart object, then what you'll get is it'll open up kind of a temp container, but the smart object will have all of your layers intact, but it'll be linked to that parent, and it doesn't exist outside of this Photoshop session. So it allows you to go in and mess with all of your layers, but you have to save it. Otherwise, it will not update this file and you will lose all of your changes.
Mm.
And because it's nested, all of these layers actually are saved inside of the parent file. So it's not like we're linked, you have this like sort of empty shell and you're just referencing stuff. Everything, all the information is stored in this one file. So that's why I can't have one large master file with just nested smart objects, because all that information is in this one large file, and it would be gigs and gigs and gigs of information.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why they're all in these separate files. And then for the smaller ones, because they're not so large, I can have nested smart objects within nested smart objects. So I usually will have, for a single panel, I'll have the art as its own nested smart object inside of a nested smart object.
Oh my God, it's like a turducken.
And if I click inside that, you'll see that I have a setup where there's the flat art, there's
That's
a layer.
So cool. Sorry. This is very satisfying.
There's the layer for the ink, and then I have an action that I use to generate these masked or these clipping layers so that all the art is consistent. So basically, with these layers set to clipping masks, I'll have something that's dedicated to like a gradient, and then just local soft lights and local highlights or local specular. And then just sometimes depending on if there's a mood, I will have an overlay layer just to kind of color grade stuff. And I just like to have a very templated version, because I've done other comics where it was kind of more of a hobby, and you could definitely see this, just however I was in the mood for, change from week to week or from update to update. But I really wanted this to feel like it was planned out. So that's why I had all of these sort of continuity, kind of like keeping everything all packaged up and consistent.
And would you say that's like kind of been the biggest change production wise between OG Simon Sue's to this?
Not really, because I did something similar with, as far as having those same layers, I did something similar with the inked version or the black and white comic, but definitely having this master file and these smart objects are definitely new. Plus I didn't work in Photoshop. So I had to develop this Photoshop kind of pipeline. But after I have the character layer as a smart object, sometimes I'll apply this kind of depth of field blur filter on it if I want to focus on a character, or I want to get a sense of like size of the environment, or have them fit into the environment better. I'll play with the depth of field, but then I will have a layer for my environment, and then I'll have a layer for the context shadows with the environment, as well as global shadows, global highlights, or just ambient lighting, and then any special effects. So I'll have like a layer for bloomish post-processing, or like glow and stuff like that. And then if I do any extra kind of hue or any adjustment layers, I'll do that inside of this nested object. And that is a panel. And each one of these guys is set up in the same exact way.
Wow. It's a lot of work.
Yes.
But worth
Yes.
the effort.
I think once you have the process down, it's definitely a lot of setup in the beginning, but once everything is in place, it really makes iteration go a lot faster. And that's my process.
Very cool.
Hello. This is Corey, the 3D modeler person thingy. So what I wanted to show mainly today is about reference. I myself am not a concept artist. So when I do my art, my character art, I usually am inspired by other people's concepts. This project that I'm working on currently, I am working directly off the concept. And this concept is by Eagle Jin, if you cannot see that. You can see him on ArtStation, but this is his hunter. So the first thing I do when I start a character is I just start off with the head, unless it's hidden, which it's not really, kind of so. But what I did was I found a model that had that nose. I was like, okay, I need cheekbones and nose and pretty eyes. And so I
Do you feel
dug.
like Frankenstein in these moments? Like
Yes.
assembling your perfect avatar?
That's kind of what happened. Yeah, like I have to go in and find either an actor or someone else. I just need something. I need to work off of something. So what I do for these references though is these are all just individual pictures I took off um, from off the internet, and I need a side view. It sucked that his eyes were missing, but I was like, I need that nose. I needed to see under his chin. I need like all different angles of his face. There's a nice side view.
I think nowadays with people having Instagram,
I
was about to
know, right?
say, yeah.
It's so like,
Does that make your life easier?
it does. like well, he didn't have an Instagram, but there are other people who do, and it's been a blessing.
You just take a
Now-
normal face and you run it through the chin filter.
Yep.
Did you make these all black and white?
Yeah, I made all of them black and white. These are originally all
And
colored.
why did you do that?
For me, it's for sculpting. So when I sculpt, let me just put this guy on solo. This interface kills me. So when I sculpt, it's all in black and white anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So and I do my face shapes through planes of the face. Those artists who are there. If you see this little guy here, mainly what I go off of is I base my sculpting off of shapes and planes and like different shadowing. So that's what I need here when I work on this guy. So I would put him. He did have a template on here. I got rid of it because I didn't need it anymore. But I sculpted the side of his face. Since I'm not going to see a lot of him, I'm not going to spend hours and hours on this guy because he is, for the most part, let me put perspective on. There it is. For the most part, in this, his face is half covered. So, I mean, the good news is for this guy with me is that he is very pretty, and it's a lot easier to sculpt pretty men very specifically because men still have strong features, but there's nothing that is, I don't know how to say it, but there's nothing that's truly out of the ordinary. Like I can make this guy a mannequin and no one would know. So
Not the only reason.
but he was easier to sculpt than like when I sculpted like Andy Serkis. So once when I finished the face, I was like, wow, done, not really. So the next part is actually his clothing. So the way I am as a 3D artist, like I have to go in layers. I'm not going to get too much into that, but mainly when I look at the clothing, I sometimes can't just randomly make it. I have to see how it works. So I needed these.
Where did you find this
The
gentleman on
internet.
the right?
The internet.
Okay.
But I needed these arm guards here, and unfortunately, this is the best I could do. So I was like, okay, I'll do something like this. Now this character also has chaps. I'm gonna, this way. Yeah. So I did go into Photoshop after I was done, just with the face, and I went to Photoshop and I lightened this up because this is a concept, so it's beautifully lit. It does have shadows and whatnot. So I found his line art on his website, which was fantastic because then I could definitely tell what's what. And then with some things, I just lighten up the picture. It was mainly for like the boots for me.
Yeah. Do you do call outs for materials?
I'm for materials I do, but that's like I'm not there yet for this one.
And
This
the
guy for
Burns call out for materials is like an asset of some kind, or are you
it's
finding...
basically where you like, so this one I would have to go online and actually find this type of leather so I can match it digitally.
Okay.
So these are all like, these two are different types of leather, and this is like a silk. So it's mainly, almost, think of it almost like sampling, where you would make like a little square and you'd say, okay, well, this is this, and this is this.
Like when you do swatches at Home Depot, or you like go to a
Yeah.
home decorator and they're like, here are all the different samples of like curtains that you can choose
Yes.
from.
Or like a beauty YouTuber who's like smearing 5 different eyeshadow swatches on their wrists.
Exactly. So right now where I am is like, what's that? Wait a minute. Something happened. Zoom out. All right. Where I am is, this guy has so much detail on him that it's, some of it is hard to find. Some of it I'm still looking because I have to look at the reference and see what I missed. So, I just got this part done and this whole lower area done. I know he has these little bolts that I built already in another 3D program. I built his gloves already in another 3D program, but those are not my concern. I'm more concerned with,
Not your concern. Or like, I wash my hands of you, gloves.
I don't
and
wash
belts.
my hands, you know what I mean? It's not, I guess I'm not worried about it at this time. Like one of my issues, which I have to fix, is like the shirt and whatnot, but we're getting back to referencing. All right, so another thing that I would do, like for armor, I don't wear armor. I know nothing of armor. So I look at how armor just is built or bolted together, because in 2D, as long as it looks good, like you're done. But in 3D, like it's not just, it has to look good, it has to actually fit on the character too. So I had to make this other under armor here to explain why this armor here is floating.
Were you ever cursing that other guy's 2D art at the same time? Like, why did you put...
No, because he did his job. Really?
Okay.
Like that was his concept, because this is different than like if you see something like a character turnaround. With a character turnaround, it'll be this guy and he will be at a 3/4 front, 3/4 back, side, front view. Like he would have a 360 view of him. This is just concept art. So,
So you're doing like the localization to make sure it's 3D ready?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
I am translating this into 3D. So, see how much behind I am. Oh no.
I would also like to add that I've met artists who, well, they're mostly people who are just starting out and they don't want to use references at all.
Yes.
Or they will say, references make you weak.
Oh no. Tell them to try to draw a
Oh, no.
horse from memory.
I know. So I'll be like, well, how do you know if you've never built like a car before or a ship? How do you know if you're doing it
Do
right?
they cold brew their
Exactly.
coffee too?
Exactly. Like for this, I myself, I've never I don't build armor. I don't armor. So I had to look at people who actually build armor. Like for these down here, I actually looked at someone who actually pressed armor to see like if I'm doing it right, because I just don't want to look like I just carved it out. I want it
You're like,
to
I
look like it's
know.
actually pressed.
You're like, I know kung fu.
I know.
You don't want it to look like a Barbie accessory that could never work.
Yes. And this guy still has a lot of little things added on. But since I am translating this from concept and not from a character turnaround, it's going to be my job to like look around and kind of finish everything out. I've seen some pretty cool things. There's another guy that took a head. I think it was just a concept of a head, and he added the rest of the body with costume and everything. It was pretty neat.
What I've been trying to do in recent years is take a lot more advantage of tags, or keywords, I should say. So, for example, this image here, I have a lot more keywords going on than I ever used to use before. So 2020, nightlight, location, and just any other descriptors. Like, I don't think I'll probably ever accrue enough pictures of Santa to really warrant giving it that keyword. But if I thought I was going to, I might, put that in here.
Nightlife, Santa.
Yeah. But what I did put in this one is Nightlight, which is the tentative name for this collection I'm trying to put together. So what I've done is actually created a smart collection. And basically, a smart collection, this is Lightroom, by the way. Smart collection in Lightroom, you can set up a collection that will basically gather images across a variety of locations by criteria which you can select. So the selection criteria I used here, like here we go. Let me show this. So it can be by the rating, label text, etc. I went to other metadata and I chose keywords, and basically now it collects together everything with that tag nightlight, which okay.
What?
All right.
I'm sorry, wait.
Okay. So, all right.
That dog was a part of it.
No. Okay, so the collection really starts here. I think I had a metadata syncing mishap. This is not nightlights. Let's fix that. Dogs. I have a keyword for dogs. And this was like a really amazing laundromat, but it's not a nightlight. We're gonna change that.
Do you add all of the keywords and the metadata manually?
I yes, but I usually add them at import, and this is another reason why I like to use small memory cards or frequently download off the cards rather than get a huge card that's going to fit a ton of different images across several days and several events, because then when I'm importing, I can just very quickly say, like, all of these were from that night when I went and did that thing, or that night when I went to that person's birthday party. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll come back and fix that later.
I think we discussed this another time, but with all of the sort of like facial recognition software and like AI going on, wonder if photographers are using ML to kind of tag their photos more efficiently.
To use to explicitly use for, face recognition software.
face recognition, or like it's trained to recognize objects in the scene, so it will kind of auto tag stuff for you.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, well, I don't know. I was just like, that would be a cool use case.
Well, that is a cute cool use case. That is correct.
I haven't used this myself, but I believe the whole Adobe Creative Suite does have sort of references for like how you might want to post-process something based on its content, which I think is a little horrifying. But that's just me.
Yeah, sooner or later, there won't be an artist. It'll just be like a button.
Oh, God, yeah. So anyway, like these are all pulled from collections, and I've already gone through and sort of filtered a lot of these, or rated them, I should say. So I'm actually just going to go ahead and filter by rated pictures. And in this view that I have it, I'm only seeing one at a time, but sometimes if I want a larger view, or if I'm kind of pulling back to see obviously weak images, I might pull back here, kind of do a broad view of things. Or if I've photographed the same location over and over, or done a very similar shot, I might go here so I can quickly find those similar vantage points. This kind of work is tough because there haven't really been cameras until recently that let you photograph in this kind of low light and do it handheld with acceptable sharpness. Like I wouldn't have been able to do this kind of work even 10 years ago.
Do you think there's something that's happening with the number of devices out there that let people take high-res photos, that I don't know, the technology or the hardware is changing?
Yeah, it's like a lot of sensors and image processors have evolved over time to be a lot more low light sensitive. It's still nothing really approaching what the basic, like there really isn't a camera that exists yet that can duplicate the dynamic range in details and highlights and shadows that a human eye can. But the technology for sensors has evolved to such an extent that like there may be a point where external lighting like a flash is no longer necessary, strictly in terms of getting the correct exposure and not having to deal with like blur. You may obviously or still want to use it if you want to have control over how the light appears in the image. But yeah, it's all down to like advancements in the sensor design.
Jen.
Yay! All right. Hello, I'm Alice. I'm going to talk about a comic that I drew recently today. And I guess the first step will just be browsing through said comic. So this is what it looks like on Instagram. Should I narrate the panels, or do you just want to read it quietly?
Present to us.
Yeah, present to us.
Okay, I will present this to you. The first panel is an orange character commenting, "Wow, a giant foot, how utterly bizarre." And a large hand descends from the sky, catching him by surprise, and then gently pulls him upwards by his head. The orange character looks up in anticipation and fear, only to find at the top of this very giant body there's this tiny head with a tiny face, and they kind of contemplate at each other for some extended period of time. And the tiny head informs him with this famous line, "This is the ideal body. You may not like it, but this is what peak performance looks like."
Wait, did one of you actually send me a picture of a T-Rex in like a dress with this quote? Someone did. Okay, I've experienced this meme before and it just always delivers. This is amazing.
Yeah, this is a pretty well-known meme, I hope, and this is kind of like a gentle commentary on the state of illustration in like tech / corporations. Where
is that what that phrase is originally from? I actually don't know the origin of the phrase.
The origin of the phrase goes way back. It was tweeted by some random dude
Is
who
it
posted a
sports?
picture. Yeah, it was some kind of sports, or I think it was like a U.S. politician, where he posted a picture of a Russian like fighter who was like really beefy, and
Wow.
he labeled it like, this is the ideal male body. You may not like it, but this is what peak performance looks like.
Oh my God. That did not age well. So assuming that's why the meme was born.
That was why the meme was born.
Also, I honestly like I've had not heard that phrase before, seeing it like revitalized. So I had no idea where it came from.
Oh yeah, this I think if you want to unpack this, there's like a couple different layers that you could kind of sink into. But yeah, on the surface, it's just something very kind of bizarre and absurd and like funny because it's so absurd. Um,
Well, I like that the tiny head of the gargantuan, I guess, tech bro still looks like a toe. Like he's barely got a face. Like, especially compared to the little orange guy. I just really like that.
His face is like the same size as the tip of his finger.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
I have a question. So, but I don't know if I'm gonna jump in too early because mine is part of your process.
Yeah, why don't you just ask it and we can go from there.
Okay. So for me, coming up with like taking a abstract idea and then putting visuals to it, for me, that always seems really difficult because I'm more of like a literal storyteller. So, like, what do you go through as far as how do you interpret something like a quote or just an abstract idea?
Yeah. I think I always start with the punchline if I have something bouncing around in my head, or not even the punchline. I usually start out with the point that I want to make. And here I drew this a couple days after watching a video by Solar Sands. I don't know if you've heard of him, but
Mm-mm.
I okay, maybe you would uh enjoy watching his videos. But basically, he's this like art commentator. This is not the right. This is it. He's this art commentator who started like making videos critiquing DeviantArt posts like when he was
Yeah.
a lot younger, and then he started kind of talking more seriously about trends in art that he was observing.
What
So
is his
one of
name again?
his name was Solar Sands, and I think he has a video. Yeah, Solar Sands, corporate art.
Wait, I saw this recently. Okay. I didn't. So he's been around doing this for a while.
Yeah, so if I just skip forward, he talks about like the Grubhub Super Bowl commercial, and he talks about how it just feels very soulless and
Mm.
bizarre, and it's just tech companies trying to capitalize on a certain visual style to evoke emotion with, you know, this very like utilitarian and sometimes like ethically questionable product. But if you keep going, he then talks about like tech art, where if you've been keeping track closely, a lot of tech art has been converging towards this very ubiquitous style that was initially I think created by an agency called Buck for Facebook, but it
Hmm.
looks like this. So you have like
Oh.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Okay, I think whenever Google changes their like their commemorative search engine, it's always in this style.
It's like the New Yorker and Google had a baby. This is what this looks like to me.
yeah. So it's kind of like this formula that you see like tiny variations of, but it's like tiny
True.
head, large body, very large feet.
It almost has like Art Deco-y quality to
Mhm.
it.
Yeah, exactly. And he kind of like goes to talk about what this was inspired from, and then he kind of talks about like the the origins of
Interesting.
this style.
Because it definitely like where did in the World Fair, if you go to Queens, there's this giant statue of man, and it has the exact same body structure. So
Mhm.
it's funny how like trends repeat themselves.
Yeah, I have not seen that, but that does not surprise me. So I think he just goes through a lot of these companies, and he talks about how it's not really the style that is bad, but it's the um
The
ubiquit
soulless use
yeah,
implementation of it.
yeah, like the very kind of deliberate coupling of this very bright, vibrant style to this product that a lot of times, you know, people question whether or not it's actually doing good in the world.
Does he
Mhm.
think because the style choice is kind of insidious because it's belying a product or an idea or service that um I don't know, maybe not so good or like you said,
Yeah,
morally questionable?
yeah, I think the style is designed to try to elicit a sense of like trust
Ah,
or some kind of emotional response. And companies have just been leaning into it a lot because on some level it probably works. Yeah. So with that in mind, I think I was always trying to do like, oh, let me just go to the pencil sketches first. Um, do you see the pencil sketches?
mhm.
Mhm.
Okay, cool. Yeah, the first step was always like I have a point. This point is to poke fun at this particular style without like very obviously poking fun at it. Um, and what came to mind was just like this meme, like this is the ideal body. You might not like it, but this is what peak performance looks like. And then from that, I think I was just trying to construct a series of panels that would build up to kind of like a pause or like a moment of anticipation. And then you kind of show the punchline and then you kind of explain what the punchline is. Um,
Do you do all of the sketching, the thumbnails just on paper or analog?
yeah, this is just printer paper that I took a picture of. Um, yeah, I think the like overarching goal is always like show not tell, and trying to make it a joke that the user or the viewer can kind of participate in without like explaining what the joke is, because I feel like that's always um, the most fun when I'm just kidding around with my friends. Like you like talk in puns,
Mhm.
or you like build on each other's really like dumb comments, and it's
Mhm.
always a good time. So that's what I try to uh, reproduce in my comics. And
Nice.
uh, after that, I put this on a light box, and then I trace it with a very blunt pencil, and then I scan it in, and I just turn up the contrast and brightness until it's only black and white and completely saturated. And then after that, I just take it into Procreate, and I use the I think ink bleed um, pen to just like fill it in. So that's kind of my overall process.
Cool. And you're posting them all on your Instagram.
Yeah, just for fun. This is also a pretty big departure from what I've drawn like pretty recently in the past. Because at
Mhm.
work, I've done a lot of like at Uber, I did 4 years of vector. So everything, these aren't vector. Well, this one's vector. So everything had to be like really precise. The shading had to be um, like physically correct most of the
Mhm.
time. And after I left the job, I was like, I just want to do something that's completely the opposite of of clean vector shapes and like nice colors. So I'm just gonna draw like the dumbest thing I can think of. It's just like squiggly lined pencil comics with like hand colored panels.
These are cute.
Thanks.
It's like the sadistic dog or cat, sadistic cat.
Yeah, I guess this one follows kind of the same logic. So I started out with the trolley This is the trolley is kind of a meme as well. It started out as a philosophical, like existential question, which is if like you see a trolley coming down the line and it's about to run over 5 people, but if you pull the lever, you can save the 5 person and kill the 1 person instead. Like, would you pull it or not? In the
Oh, did it?
underlying,
Wasn't that like a whole episode of The Bad Place?
maybe I've never watched it.
Okay, so they definitely talked about this philosophical question as well. Never
The-
mind.
Oh, the good place or the
Oh, The Good Place.
Place.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
I was like,
we know where
Yeah.
Shannon's head is at.
oh no.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's like the Spider-Man or the villain ultimatum, like save your girlfriend or kill these 50 citizens, random strangers.
Preschoolers. 50
Yeah.
preschoolers.
Yeah, so it's like it's trying to uncover like the value placed on human life. And then there are a bunch of memes that came out of that where one variation was like, oh, you have a trolley that's going to run over an infinite amount of people versus this 1 person. Therefore, if you don't pull the lever, like statistically, 0% of the people will die because like the amount of people on that railroad track is infinite.
Oh
And
my god.
I think
Wow.
it's horrific but hilarious at the same time
Yeah.
where you can like represent these concepts and these more deep moral dilemmas with such adorable art style. I find like, is that something that makes the short form comic really fun, that you can do these like really sort of crazy takes on stuff, and it's very punctuated, so it's easier to get across these like this sort of deep profound thinking but in a very sort of sarcastic short abbreviated way? Is it like more effective to do it that way than like a long story that has a lot of symbolism and
Thinking.
Yeah.
allegory? Yeah.
Yeah, I would compare these to like shower thoughts, or just like, wouldn't it be funny if like XYZ? And I think with short form comics, it's easier to take just like mash 2 things together in a, like a really fun and unexpected way to get the punchline. So for this one, the trolley thing is what I started out with, and then I was like, oh, but like cats can't help themselves from like pushing things off counters. So like, what if I incorporated that into this like very moralistic question, where like instead of it being like a ethics driven decision, it was more just from an unstoppable like natural impulse. And then the dog playing with the dead body is just like the
Yeah.
cherry on top. But yeah, these are my 2 comics so far.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I am looking forward to more, Alice.
Thank you.
So that's it for today's episode of Behind the Panels. Thank you guys so much for joining us. This episode was a little bit different than our usual fare. I really enjoyed doing it, so I'm definitely planning to do another one in the future. We're still working out the kinks, so hopefully the next one will be even smoother. Before we go, I just want to give a quick shout out to a few of my Patreons. Thank you, Anna J. Henderson, Ash S., Oot Reckley's, I know I'm mispronouncing that, Darkbox, and H.J. Shuttleworth. Thank you for all of your support. You guys are absolute rock stars. Till next time, I'll see you guys later.